Right now, we're joined by D.C. Councilmember Tommy Wells.
Councilman Wells, thank you so much for joining us here on WMAL. I want to talk about the story that has really captured a lot of people's attention. It has to do with 911. I mean, we had a case the other day where a woman called 911 because there was an intruder in her house, and she got put on hold. And it took quite a while for somebody to come on the line, and she makes the case, and I think it's a fairly good case to make, that if this had been a guy with a weapon, it could have turned out a lot worse for her. And then we hear from somebody who works for the 911 system in the district who tells us, we meet the standards, and we're doing everything we should be doing, and yeah, it could happen again. Is that an acceptable answer in your mind?
Well, good morning, and this is a very important topic, so I'm glad you're talking about it, because we have to reassure folks that when you call an emergency line like 911 that you're going to get a response. She was put on hold for about 67 seconds, and that was way too long. The average response time is between 5 and 10 seconds. And when you're in the midst of a crisis with certainly a victim of a violent crime, that is just not acceptable. Now, I've asked for a report. What it does seem is that there had been an unusual increase in volume of calls, but they had 9 call takers on that were ready, or that were taking calls, and 2 that were on break. And so, however it works, you've got to get someone, to answer the phone and be able to put you through to the police.
Wow.
The police responded in 4 minutes, so it's a matter, the time counts.
I just heard something, though, that
unacceptable.
I just heard something said that I've not heard before, that 2 guys were on break. Okay, now look, everybody's entitled to a break. But if you're in a moment where you acknowledge call volume is unusually high, then why were those guys on break?
That's a good question. They are, this is an agency that's fully resourced, fully staffed, and this should not happen. And that's why, again, that I asked for a report to see if was there unusual number of people sick or whatever, and there was not. There was a higher volume of calls than usual. They were getting about, I think that day they got over 4,000 calls. Usually the calls are around over 3,000. So they did have a higher than normal number of calls. But again, being put on hold for a minute when you're in the middle of a violent crime is not acceptable.
Councilman Wells, what's the name of the union that represents the dispatchers for 911?
I believe it's NAGE. It's not it's not AFSCME or some of the other larger unions.
But there is a public employees union involved here, right?
Absolutely.
And how easy is it? I mean, you're going to investigate this, and if you determine and the council determines that there is a problem here with how they've staffed it or how they're managing their staff, how easy is it in your experience to be able to go back and say, listen, we got to make some provisions here if there are breaks, or we've got to make some different provisions if we've got increased volume to hold people over, or to maybe bring in some non-union people who can come in and pick up some call volume? Are you going to be able to have that flexibility?
Well, the first thing is to, however they staff, however they work, it's a matter of performance that I hold them accountable for. Now, they can say, and that we do have a very good average response time, but as you know, averages don't tell the whole story. The average response time by a call taker is around 5 seconds. The national average is somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds. But that even tells you the difference between 5 seconds and 67 seconds is huge. So every now and then you're going to have a time, whether it be an earthquake or some other act, where the call center gets overloaded because of an unusual...
Yeah, we all understand that.
Absolutely.
All right.
But this should not happen on a regular day.
Councilman Wells, I want you to listen real fast, very short. This is D.C. resident Kathleen Burke, who had this problem with 911.
Utterly terrified at the prospect that I might ever have to rely on 911 in a life and death situation.
Now, this hits people where they live. You're at home, and there's an intruder in your house. You're a woman, or it's your wife. You're worried about that. What do you say to the people who say, the best thing for Kathleen Burke in a situation like that is if she were a responsible gun owner, she could have a firearm to protect herself from an intruder in her home rather than relying on 911?
Well, as we know, she's far more likely to be shot by her own gun with an intruder. The intruder was going through her desk. If that's where her gun was, well, then she would have been more likely to have been shot.
So you don't...
That's quite a hypothetical. What if she kept it under her pillow or in her nightstand?
Well,
if you want to play hypotheticals, you think it's in the desk, I think it's in the nightstand. So now what?
But in terms of statistics, you're more likely to be shot by your own gun. Than
Well, I don't think Kathleen Burke wants to know about statistics. I think she wants to be able to defend herself. So, you know, if you throw a statistic at her, she's going to say, you know what, I'm willing to take that risk if I can defend myself.
Well, I don't know if it applies to this case. The intruder was not armed. She was not armed. And she, in this particular case, we did have, certainly the victim was very aggressive. She ran after the intruder. She was able to get him out of her house. Neither one of them was shot or killed. But should she have been able to shoot and kill him?
Whoa. I didn't say shoot and kill him. I said defend herself with a firearm. I'm not saying
I know that in this particular case that she came across an intruder. She was able to drive him out of her house. She should have had a response time that was more quick by the 911 call. And let me tell you, I'm impressed the police got there within 4 minutes.
Well, 4 minutes. A lot can happen in 4 minutes. I just want to make sure you're on the record here. You believe that because you think the statistics show that gun owners are more likely to hurt themselves with their own gun.
No, they're more likely to get shot with their own gun than be able to shoot it.
So they shouldn't have the right to defend themselves in their home, even if 911 puts them on hold.
I didn't say they don't have a right to defend themselves in their own home. What I am saying is that guns are inherently dangerous, and that this idea that that it's going to be a perfect situation where someone comes in, you're going to have your gun under your pillow and all that. I guess you can write it any way you want, but I'm really concerned about the overall safety of our citizens.
All right.
And guns have not been shown necessarily to make a community any safer.
All right, Councilman Wells, we appreciate you joining us, and we know you've already hired a campaign manager, so as the mayor race heats up, we hope that you join us again.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.